Hey everybody, this is LMP Games, and we are here for a new video series that I'm starting. Before we get into too much about this, I want to kind of go over my background a little bit. Just so you know, I'm not some random nutter on YouTube. So, I've been in the software development field for almost 13 years now. Let's see, maybe 13? I have to do math, which is a dangerous thing for me at this time of day. So, 2007 to 17 would be 10 years. We are now 6 years, so 16 years, okay, 16. 16 years, I've been doing software development, not professionally only since 2015-ish. So professionally, we're in about the 8-year range. Not professionally, just in general, we're at the 16-year range. Started with C++, taught myself that using an online course from a website called GameInstitute.com. You got a whole bunch of different things there. One of the courses, or one of the sets of courses they were doing, was C++ for game development, modules 1 and 2. I did both those. Didn't come very easily to. I'm not one of those people that's like, you know, coding wonderkind kind of thing. But it didn't take that long either, I don't think, in general, like for somebody teaching themselves how to do something as opposed to doing like a full-fledged course. This is like a course, basically you get a book. It would have a CD in it for like examples and things. And you watch an online kind of, I wouldn't even call it like a seminar. It's more of like an instructional, basically it's like a pre-recorded thing. There was like a live thing you could watch, but you'd have to get up at a specific point to like watch it. So what you're watching is basically a pre-recording or audio of that, and there wasn't much interaction you can have with the instructor outside of that live version of it. You can send questions and things, but I never felt the need to, because I didn't really think that the instructors they had would be that helpful, if that makes any sense. So basically I taught myself, using this course and healthy dose of Google and Stack Overflow, how to write C++. I want to say like a year and a half. It's probably a little bit less than that, but it felt like about a year and a half. Before I got to like a point where I could write something and reasonably expect it to work within the first couple of times. Learned C++ over that time frame. I joined a game jam. It's really a game jam. They called it a student game challenge. They gave it a fancy sounding name. Essentially it was a game jam though, that Game Institute held, probably still do. I haven't been there in a long time. They held for, I think every, like, couple of months, I think, was the cycle for that. But joined the game jam they had in October of the year that I started there. So it was about 6 months. So I started in June. And topic was space RPG. And I ended up winning that game jam. But so I went from there and learned a bunch of other languages. I now know like 10, I think. C++, C#, Objective-C, VB.NET, ASP.NET, PHP, JavaScript, Java, know a little bit of Python, know a little bit of Ruby. I know Lua. I know some Sharp. I've worked a little bit with COBOL. Yes, that COBOL. and also a couple different languages that are part of Salesforce, which is a CRM, customer relations management platform. That's what I work with in my day job. It's mostly a Java-like language called Apex that has built-in database support, and JavaScript mainly. And I know I'm probably forgetting something somewhere, but those are the languages I can recall right at the moment at the top of my head that I know. Obviously, some of them I know better than others. If I had to pick my main languages, it would be PHP, JavaScript, C++, C#, VB.NET, and Lua, and well, the stuff for Salesforce. Those 7 would be my top knowledge ones. All the rest I have either like maybe intermediate level knowledge or less. And the only reason I know anything for Ruby is because of RPG Maker, which brings us to the topic of this video. So, what this video series is going to be about, the overarching video series, is a series of tutorials about RPG Maker. About pretty much everything related to it. So, mapping, eventing, graphic design kind of stuff. It kind of falls underneath mapping too, but I'm breaking that to its own thing because it technically is. Plugin creation, which is the focus of this particular series of that series. You know, music, all that kind of stuff. Though the music one's probably more just me doing stuff as opposed to telling you how to do stuff, because I don't really do, you know, not yet. I'm still learning things. I haven't gotten to the point where I technically feel like I can teach people things about music and how to make music, other than just making music and having you copy all my bad habits. So those are going to be like the different topics and categories. I guess it could talk like music theory and when you would do something, when you wouldn't do something. But, you know, that's stuff that you could easily, you know, kind of suss out yourself. Just because like there's an element of common sense to that. But this particular series of videos is going to be on the plugin end of things. What we're going to be doing is talking about how to make plugins, when you would use a plugin, when you wouldn't, different considerations for plugins, which kind of fits the other 2 prior categories, and then also going through and like actually making plugins and talking about the different things you can do with them, how you would do certain things, why you do certain things a certain way, and all this that kind of goes with that. Now, the reason for that is because there are not enough plugin developers in the plugin development space, especially for RPG Maker MZ. Now, my videos will focus on MV, which is a different engine from MZ, but the stuff you'll learn, like the concepts you'll learn from this, is going to be applied to MZ as well. So it's not going to be quite siloed entirely. A lot of the like actual development of the plugins and how they're built will be a little bit different, because MZ and MV both have MZ has different some different code in the engine than MV that makes it so that some things aren't compatible, which is slightly annoying. But the reason why I say there's not that many people, not enough people in MZ specifically, is because there aren't. We have a group called vis-a-vis making a bunch of plugins, but they are charging way too much because they have no competition. And it's a huge cost of entry and barrier for people getting onto MZ. So hopefully by introducing more people to plugin programming and getting them at least started on a path to getting to a point where they can make their own plugins and release them, we'll get more people in that space, and they'll kind of maybe filter towards MZ, or maybe stick around MV, or maybe even travel downward to VX, VX Ace, and other earlier engines. We'll talk about all that in a bit. So, RPG Maker is a game engine. It's a game engine like, Unity and Unreal are, but it's a 2D engine. So It's an engine that's specifically designed to work with sprite-based graphics. The whole top billing about RPG Maker is that it's a really simple engine to get into and learn and make games in. It's total bullshit. Don't listen to that. That's all. It's marketing hype. It's never been true. It is true that it's easy to use, but it's not easy to make a good game. You will see on forums and other places, Steam, just litany after litany of posts about how crappy RPG Maker games are. And that's because it's really easy to make bad games. Because it's easy to use. And make stuff. So, you know, you can go in and make something, and then you don't have to put any extra effort into learn how to do stuff the right way or makes things good, and then you can release it, and it invariably might be bad. Whereas in, say, Unreal Engine or Unity, they're complex enough that it draws a certain kind of developer to them, and those developers usually have prior experience with at least some form of game design, because the cost associated with using those engines is a lot higher than RPG Maker is. You could literally get RPG Maker, make a game for no money at all, or at least the cost of the engine, release it commercially, and make money from it for 40 to 60 to 80 bucks just for the cost of the engine, and make money from that game. And not have to put any other effort into anything else, like better assets, good writing or anything like that. You can just throw something together and you're good to go. And that's kind of one of the Achilles heels of RPG Maker, and one of the benefits too, because once you get to a certain level of knowledge, you can do some pretty wild things in RPG Maker just with being able to write code. You can make the engine do some really insane stuff because it's so simple and beginner friendly. Which is kind of what draws a lot of the people in the community I'm in to RPG Maker, is that you can put together games pretty quickly. And then also, if you want to go for a deeper dive into a game, make something a little more complex, or do some really crazy things, you can do that. The amount of effort you have to put into doing that gets higher the more complex you want to go, because of RPG Maker's overall design style. I'll talk about that more in the video too. But it can be done. That said, there are a lot of limitations in RPG Maker as well. And a lot of those limitations can't be solved by plugins, or at least can't be solved by simply just creating a plugin. You have to go in and modify other files, or you have to go in and change the way that the engine is kind of working based on what you're trying to do. Like, for example, there's a hard limit on the number of maps you can have in RPG Maker, 999. The only way to get by that is to essentially allow the engine to load another map folder. That comes with a whole host of problems associated with that, but it can be done. It's not easy to do either. That's an example of one of those limitations that we have no control over, because it's hard-coded into the editor. And we can't change the editor coding because reasons. Because capitalist, we need money reasons, I guess. That being said, there are people, I think, actively trying to create an open-sourced RPG Maker editor. I think they're actually trying to reverse engineer the editor and then recreate it open-sourced. So in the future, that might not be a problem anymore, which would be amazing, because that's been a problem from the beginning with RPG Maker. That the engine editor is crap in some ways. In a lot of ways, actually. There's a lot of limits that are in place that don't need to exist, other than the developer saying, no, you can't go more than this. Even though there's no real reason to say that, or to put that there. So, you have to be aware of a lot of different limitations. You have to know when those limitations can be broken, when they shouldn't be broken, and then know when those limitations can be bypassed by a plugin or some other kind of thing you can do. But once you have that knowledge, you can do a lot of crazy things. Again, we're going to go more in depth on all that in the next video for stuff at RPG Maker. We'll talk about all the different engines, what they were, how they worked, that kind of stuff. We'll go over the engine for MV, actually look at the editor, and again, talk about all that stuff. This video is more just about getting you familiarized with things. And then we have JavaScript. It's a coding language. At this point, it's a coding language. It's just considered a scripting language because you only really used it on websites. These days, you have things like Node.js, more like background level things that technically make it a coding language now. I wouldn't say it's an easy language to learn, but it's also not as hard as a lot of other ones. It's a good starting language to pick up. If you have no coding experience, it will be a little bit rough because you'll still be learning the same, programming concepts that are sometimes hard to get your head around at first. But if you have some coding experience with other languages, a lot of that knowledge will come over to JavaScript, and you'll be able to pick up like the syntax part of it pretty quick. It is still a coding language, so there are still, you have to have a certain mindset. You have to be willing to fail a bunch and be able to learn from those failures. And you have to be able to do a lot of researching on your own to look things up and be able to figure out problems. There is Stack Overflow, but Stack Overflow is also not reliable in a lot of cases. At least in terms of the, if you find an answer that existed in 2016, there's a good chance, as far as JavaScript goes, and actually this probably applies to many other languages, that answer, while still probably relevant and works, is no longer the best solution for your problem or the problem you're trying to solve. Like, for example, let's say you want to remove a character from the end of a string. In the past, you might have used a trim function or left, and you may not know what these are. That's fine. You might have just done, since technically strings are a list of characters, you might have done a thing where you just got all the characters except the last one. And that might be answers for different on Stack Overflow somewhere. But what might not be there because the answer is so old is an answer that says, well, there's actually a new feature in the latest version of the engine that allows you to do this much more easily now, like a new function. That being said, in the case of RPG Maker, you have to be cognizant of the fact that RPG Maker operates on a version of JavaScript, not JavaScript as a whole. So, because JavaScript does have versions, the browser support for JavaScript is based on a version of JavaScript. So, the version of JavaScript that RPG Maker and V uses is ECMA 2016, I believe, or ECMA 16, I think, is the proper version of it. Basically, it's the version of JavaScript from 2015. If you do stuff that's been released in a later version of JavaScript, it may or may not work. I've seen cases where it does work. I've seen cases where stuff like that doesn't because of the version of Node.js that MV is using. RPG Maker MV is technically running in a browser source, even when you open a game from an exe file. It's still operating in the context of a browser, so whatever that browser you're running on top of supports is what you can do. Which means that there are some cases where potentially, it used to be a problem more in the past, not so much now, where we actually have parity between all the browsers, but it used to be in the past that certain browsers wouldn't be able to do certain things because, IE wouldn't support some functionality that Chrome or Opera or Firefox did. Not so much a problem now, but in the past that was a thing that potentially could cause problems. But yeah, so that's what JavaScript is, coding language. If it's your first time working on any kind of code, it might be a little bit hard to pick up at first. If you have worked on code before, it shouldn't be too hard. You just have to learn the different syntax and stuff for it. If you've worked with JavaScript before, then you're good to go, for the most part. So, as far as what you should do after this video, if they have been released, which they should have they may not. If you're watching this in sometime in the future, all the other videos should be up at some point. But if you're watching this just after this is released, they might not be up yet. But
the next video you should watch if you've never had any experience with RPG Maker should be video 2, because we're going to go over RPG Maker in depth. If you've used RPG Maker before but haven't done any coding, then you would go from 2, or you would go skip number 2 and go to number 3, which is going to be the introduction to JavaScript and GitHub and Git and what all that is. We're going to go over some basic stuff like variable types, some different types of coding syntax, and some examples of those, and kind of get you familiarized with the basic stuff you'll need to know to make a plugin. If you have used RPG Maker before and have coded before, you can skip right to number 4, which will be the first video where we're going to be making a simple plugin. So that's kind of your roadmap there. So if you haven't done anything before, it's your first time with RPG Maker, first time doing coding, continue watching the videos in sequence. If you've done coding before, you can skip over number 3. If you've used RPG Maker in the past or currently do, and you have done coding before in JavaScript, you can skip to number 4. So yeah, thanks for watching. That's going to be the end of this video. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Otherwise, I'll see you in either the second, third, or fourth video, or any other videos on the channel, or maybe on the stream whenever I am streaming. And I'll catch you guys later.